to stop you for a second, because what you're saying is these affirmations, you creating these words like that are a visual representation of this stuff, or even saying them when you start to notice you go down a path. The words themselves are nothing. Like they don't do anything.
Right.
How is it that you are, like, when you say things are starting to turn around because you're using these words, like what is actually happening? What do you think it's actually doing?
Actually, in knowing that like I could get to that neutrality place, and knowing that like I would refill my brain with the negativity, or I'd get to this, pessimistic point, like I noticed the thought patterns and I would pay attention to them. And so I started to print these things on the wall in my mind. So like you're looking for a technique. Here's the technique. If you think of your brain as, if you think of your walls like or if you think of your mind as like a wall of like what do they call it, a dream board. So I started to like, I'm aware of my brain. I'm aware of my thinking. I'm not just a reactive person. I'm not just a monkey brain. I got my awareness. So here I am. I basically pinned up a white wall or a pinboard on my mind and in my brain, like I'm thinking this. So I've now separated from the everyday reactivity thoughts. I've made a separate space in my brain, compartmentalized, and a little area in my brain where it's like, okay, I have my own little whiteboard, and I'm going to do what I can to fill that with something. So I start, every time I hit this negative place, I go to neutrality, and I move my way over to the whiteboard, and I start looking at those. Funny, I gotta go wipe my son's butt. Hold on one second, I'll be right back.
Dad life.
So I separate a place in my brain. I have the negative, normal, reactive Josh. I know I can get to neutrality through meditation. And then I basically created this other side of my brain. I'm imagining this, whatever you want to call it. I created in my brain a space, a whiteboard where I can start putting some positive stuff. So I started using power of positive thinking to, they say it works. I just start using some of their stuff. I put it up on my mind and I use it. And I wake up in the morning and I say, today's a new day. It's beautiful. Make the best of it. Renew my mind, renew my spirit when I start getting in these ruts. And so it slowly starts hacking my brain. I start to have different thoughts. I'm no longer just allowing this negativity to stay in me. I acknowledge it. I get to my neutrality, and then I move over onto my whiteboard and start, living in these positive affirmations. And so, I mean, this is like, now it took me a while to get here, but like I have my own little acronym. Like I still use some of power of positive thinking ones, but like I have this acronym that I leave imprinted on my brain, and it's called the PMA League. And it's positive, more than enough attitude, love, ease, empathy, appreciation, ask and receive, attitude of gratitude, give and receive, understanding, and easy for easy expansion, or eager for easy expansion.
So I'm gonna put that and all the books that you're mentioning, I'm putting those in the show notes. So people that are interested in that, like if you guys want to use that, I don't think Josh trademarked it, so you can steal it if you want. And so anybody that's interested in like Josh's acronym, the PMA League, and all the books that he was mentioning, you guys can use that as a reference.
So the love, it's like I grew up. You hear about biblical love. You watch, We're the 99-2000. You watch, Back That Ass Up love. You have all kinds of like just, hip hop love. Like you think you know what love is, but like I started diving into the word love and like what it really meant for me, and like I'd sit in that in the morning and really figure out what it meant to me to love somebody, or to love my neighbor, or love, like the levels of love. And I dove into that. The word ease is like finding ease in everything. Like I was so rigid all the time. Like, oh, everything's so like you make things so taut. Like you try to be stern with your kids, and you want to be this. And that's where I like use the fire service. Like I got so into this mindset of like, yes sir, yes ma'am, or like, like things have to happen a certain way. And I found that I was making my life harder at home and making my life harder, in everyday dealings. So I started focusing on the ease of things and just be like, man, this is easy. Just start saying it. This is easy peasy, And I would just start like, instead of making things more difficult, I think I had the conversation with you. Like my friend calls me, he's like, oh, come over to the house. And I'm like, immediately worst case scenario. I'm like, oh, you have a pool. My son's going to end up in it. My 1-year-old's going to end up at the bottom of it. Like I start thinking of all these things, and they almost stop me. Like I'm not going to go hang out with my friend because I don't want to be on high alert watching my 1-year-old the whole time on my 4-year-old swimming. Like, it's just like you start playing all these worst case scenarios, and I'm like, because I'm aware of it, I'm like, all right, because you don't want to do it, we're going to go do it. And basically you go and it ends up not being that. But like Mr. Worst Case Scenario could have stopped me. But instead I just find the ease in it. Like, hey, we're just going to go hang out. It's not a big deal. Like, I'll keep the kid inside or whatever I have to do to make sure he doesn't end up at the bottom of the pool. You know what I mean? But finding the ease in things, empathy, that's just exactly what I was saying before, like understanding that everybody's going through it. Everybody's dealing with something. Some people are aware of it, some people aren't, and you're probably going through it. You may not be aware of it. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But understand that you can find help, Somebody's been through it before. You're not the first. And even if you are, somebody would be happy to help you, Like I did all this on my own, you know what I mean? The work that I did, I didn't ask to be helped. I tried EAP a couple times just to go talk to them, but I found that like all it had me doing was talking about my problems, not solving them. So I ended up just like using meditation, sitting on the floor in the morning and working through it on my own. And I'm not saying don't go to EAP. That's not what I'm saying. It was beneficial here and there, but that's the way I work. I'd rather Google it and figure it out and work through it myself. And so appreciation is exactly what it is, appreciate your crew, appreciate your kids, appreciate your wife. Like we get so caught up in the everyday doing that sometimes we don't actually stop and say like, man, I have a great life. Like I appreciate that I have a roof over my head. I appreciate that I have water to drink. I appreciate that, I have all these good things going for me, even though I might have one bad thing going for me. You know
Amen.
what I mean? Like,
yep.
Dealing with that. And then ask and receive is law of attraction. That's Bob Proctor and Abraham Hicks. That's a whole nother conversation. Attitude of gratitude is simply that, it's the same thing as appreciation, like giving thanks, waking up in the morning and finding 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for. I'm thankful for the pillow I get to sit on. I'm thankful for the coffee that I get to drink in the morning, like just simple things like that. And like you start seeing, and I'll tell you how this changed for me, because I started doing all this stuff, give and receive. Too often we get wrapped up in the asking, we forget to actually do some nice things for people, so I ended up like, at the peak of my like greatest point, leading up to my my tragedy, I was giving 10% of all my extra income. Any money I made DJing or real estate, 10% of it I'd find a way to give it away or do nice things or whatever it was. I was trying to make a point to give away 10% of my extra income that I didn't need, or just to feel that giving. You know what I mean? Yeah. Understanding is just stepping outside of yourself to be, it's almost kind of like empathy, but understand not everybody's gonna understand that not everybody's gonna think the way you think. Eager for easy expansion. This is Abraham Hicks and Bob Proctor and Law of Attraction, and this is just like my general understanding of it. But it's like grateful for all you have, but eager for more. Like the universe is designed to give you whatever you want. Like you're always gonna want more, and that's okay. But there's always gonna be a gap from where you sit now to where you want to be. Like you become a driver, or you're an EMT, you become a paramedic. Now you're like, okay, what's next? But be grateful that you're a paramedic, and that's okay to want more. Just know there's a gap, and you're going to be working. You get paramedic, now you want to be a driver, you want to be a lieutenant, whatever route you want to go. I'm relating it to the fire service. There's always going to be more, or there may not be. You might be happy in your place or the position you're sitting at the fire service, but maybe you want a new car, or maybe you want this, or maybe you want that. But there's like power in being grateful for all you have, but easy for, eager for that next step. It's kind of like this middle place, and it's an understanding I have from listening to those two. But allow that expansion and allow that whatever you're trying to attain, let it come easy. Like instead of making it a difficult situation, like settle in that ease and just be like, okay, that's what I want. Whatever I have to do it. And there's something to be said about that. And that like oftentimes we come up with a plan and we think that this is the plan and this is the path I have to follow. And sometimes no way is the way, don't come up with it. Just decide I want to be a driver, whatever I have. Like, don't think that you have to do something specific to get there. Like maybe you go hang out with a friend and learn from him, or, that's a poor example. I don't know how to relate that. So basically it's like, you want to become a millionaire. Don't think that one way is the only way. You could become a millionaire a million different ways. Like allow your mind to open up and expand to other, perspectives, other point of views, because you could be sitting hard set in this way, and all you have to do is take one step outside of your way,
right?
And now you find it,
right? Yeah.
And so that's kind of my acronym. It's my everyday like reminder. I put 413 PMA on my wrist, and this has to do with our loss. I'll explain that. And the infinity sign is just a reminder to be limitless. Like, don't get caught up and so rigid in your way that you can't step outside of that and find another solution. You know, find those limiting beliefs you have, the stuff that's stopping you in your head. And this is hard work, man. It's not like, oh, you just like take a class and you find it. Like, I get up at 5 a.m. every day before shift. I try to do it on my days off. I'm not perfect. It doesn't always happen, but I get up at 5 a.m. every day before shift. That's the one guarantee. And that's where I do my work.
But I wanted to talk about that. Like you said, it's hard work, but life is hard. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like if you are overweight and you're trying to lose weight, like working out is hard. Being fat is hard. You got to pick your hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure what you're doing right now, your daily routine, this schedule, all these tools that you have built for yourself and had to learn how to do and to refine them over time. You know, this acronym that you came up with, PMA League, that basically guides your mindset for your entire life. That's tough, but I can only imagine how much tougher life could be or would be without any of that stuff. So it's like you're investing, you're picking, you know, what hard is, but you know, I'm sure it's harder without it, you know?
Yeah. And so The Four Agreements is a great book. Don Miguel Luis, I think he did a new book. It's The Fifth Agreement. And I can't quote his version of the Four Agreements because I actually ended up changing them. The whole thing with me changing his words is because I always try to flip negative words to positive words. Like, I always Google the antonym or the antonym, right? The opposite of words. Like if it's a negative word, I look for the antonym so that I can say it in a positive phrase. Instead of saying, don't forget my keys, you say, remember your keys.
Right.
You're focusing on the positive side of it. You're focusing on what you want to do. So,
instead of saying don't.
So like that, I took his words and I split it, but it's like, seek clarity is one of the things that like people don't do. We're in the fire service. People talk all the time. Sometimes stories get skewed, you know. It's the old telephone game. Tell me the ball went down the wall. You know what I mean? And by the time it gets you, it's like the hall's down the wall, ball, small, whatever. You know what I mean? Make
mall,
it up. It doesn't make any sense. So it's like, I use it all the time. Like somebody will get a bad rap and like they'll come in our station and I'll be like, hey man, what really happened? You know, this is, you know, I'm not, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But like, I don't want to live in your reputation based on what other people are saying. Like, tell me your version. And you know, I don't do it in an aggressive manner. You know, usually me and my lieutenant are, you know, I'm just a firefighter, paramedic at this point. But like, they'll come on our truck and me and my lieutenant will have like these open conversations with them and just be like, hey man, we're not here to give you a hard time. We're not here to make your life miserable. We want to coach you. We want to teach you. We want to help you grow. Like but we don't want this to be this elephant in the room. Like, if you want to talk about it, great. If you don't, but this is what your reputation is. You know what I mean? And like, we'll have a conversation with them and be like, okay, well, look, we're not going to hold it against you. It's not a big deal. We're going to help you try to get past it. We're going to help you try to grow from it. Or we see, did you learn from it? You know what I mean? But that's where like, seek clarity is huge. Or on the fire ground, an officer says something over the radio. You think you hear them right, but you're not sure. And you go, ventilate the Bravo Delta corner instead of the Alpha Bravo or whatever, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's that whole repeat the order back. But in everyday conversations, nobody does that. They think they heard something, or maybe they're not sure, or they just assume all the time that somebody's this way or something's that way, or they heard it right. And then they go about their business based on that assumption. They never actually take the time to say, hey man, is that clear? Or does that make sense? Or, you know?
Yeah, we want to jump on the story. We don't ever try to fix it. You got kids running around in the background. We should have threw the disclaimer in, active dad mode right now. Like, who knows what's going to happen, but that's part of the gig. So it's all good.
The good news is he has his clothes on. So
otherwise we'd have to do a lot of editing. So as far as like you talked about a lot that I wanted to unpack, but I think I'm going to wait and start to let it out as we keep going with the story. So you have all these tools. You've, by coincidence, luckily for what has happened, but you have all these tools that you've, kind of put in your toolbox, you've learned to use and you've refined them. And I'm assuming that like life is more in your control, and you being on the fire service, you have coping mechanisms for tough stuff. So where are we at now?
Tombilly's podcast is all about hacking the brain and like how people excel and do really good in their field. He interviews a lot of people, but like there's a couple things that he said out, he says that like stuck out to me. I heard him say it this way. He's like, be so extreme in your ownership that like you're driving down the road and a drunk driver runs a red light and smashes you and you become, paraplegic or whatever. And you're so extreme in your ownership that like, you're like, oh, well, it's my fault. I wasn't paying attention. I drove through that green light without clearing the intersection. Like basically like what he's saying, it's extreme, but he's basically saying like in extreme ownership, you get to take the power back. You're no longer blaming. It's not, oh, that drunk driver hit me, my life is over. It's like, well, you know what? I was in that car. I chose to go that route. I chose to not clear that intersection, or I didn't look both ways, or I drove through that green light, even though it was green and I should have. You just start saying the things that you could have done to make that situation whatever, you own it. And then from there, you're like, okay, this is my situation now. How do I make the best of it?
Right. He's not saying like be depressed because you were just injured in this horrible car accident. He's saying this is under your control. You had the power for this,
Right. And that's also a Viktor Frankl thing. And then so the other one is I love this one. He talks about like, he used to pride himself on being the smartest guy in the room, and certain people do this. They pride themselves on being the strongest or the whatever, insert your pride. And, he kept finding like there was failures to these, like what's the word? I don't know the word. Anyways, basically what he's saying is he ended up priding himself on being a learner.
Right.
Because no matter what situation occurs, if that's what you set your pride on, you're going to grow. Yeah, so pride yourself on being a learner. And so that kind of shifted my way of thinking too. It's like, if you're priding yourself on being a learner and something goes wrong, you're taking extreme ownership and priding yourself on being a learner, it's easy to say, I fucked up. What do I need to learn? How can I grow from this?
Yeah.
There's literally no situation. Yeah, in our field, in the fire service, there's a little bit more elevated, consequences in some situations, But at the end of the day, stuff happens and you can't do anything but own it and learn from it, right?
Yeah.
And so those are two things from him. He interviews all kinds of people. It's crazy. Andy Frisella runs the motherfucking CEO podcast, the MF CEO. He ended up trying 75 Hard. That's his program. And it's basically drink a gallon of water a day, stick to a diet, no cheat meals, no alcohol, read 10 pages a day, 2 workouts a day, at least 45 minutes of that workout has to be outside, and take a progress pic. So you want to talk about a mind fuck? That's a mind fuck. Try that shit. It'll fuck with you. It'll challenge you. You'll want to quit. You'll really find out who you really are. I didn't make it all the way through. I ended up. It was on shift. I read 7 of the 10 pages and I failed myself on account of it. I think we got a couple calls after 10 and I came back at like midnight or 1 in the morning and I laid down time ran out. He says by the end of the day, something happened at shift. I forgot to read a couple pages and I failed myself on it. But anyways, what that gave me was like, you come up with so many excuses not to do things. Like it's very easy to just be like, I don't feel like doing that, and it's all areas of your life. And so you realize that when you set out to do something, if you really want to do it, like it takes mental fortitude, it takes commitment, it takes everything. And I had to give up some family functions and give up family time. And, I was doing workouts sometimes at 11 o'clock at night. I was just, doing what I do to get through, but it's just proof that you can do things. You have the ability to do them. It's just a matter of sticking to it.
Right.
And then Goggins is the whole, you think you're your breaking point and you're really only at 40%. So I'm listening to these guys, and of course, like my brain's hardening. I'm getting calluses on my brain. Like I'm working out a little harder. I'm doing all these things. This is I'm correlating the back injury, but like the 2 years after that too, like this is like since then. And so I'm getting hard, but like here I am, like trying to find that balance. Like I don't want to be so rigid and so hard that I'm not having fun. You know what I mean? Like right. I don't want every day to be like this, every day's got to be embrace the suck. I want to have a little bit of fun in my life. And
there's balance.
I have kids. I don't want to be so hard on them that I'm, yelling at them and screaming at them all the time. So then I dive into the Bob. I've always been about interested in the law of attraction and universal truths and all that stuff. Bob Proctor teaches money stuff, and that's why where the words matter thing. My mom used to say money doesn't grow on trees. And it's like you grow up hearing that and you're like, well, I want this. Well, money doesn't grow on trees. You're right. Money doesn't grow on trees. Or, I get it. Money doesn't grow on trees, but it's like the whole thing is, well, where does it come from? Like instead of just saying something to people and like, like teach them. I'm not
Yeah.
blaming my parents. I love my parents. They did a good job, but it's like
I was the same way.
Money
Right.
is printed in the press. It's printed. You have to earn it by the level of service. So like up your level of service. You want to make more money? Find a way to, provide more skill set, whatever. And so like I started focusing on like through listening to him, I started focusing on the way, again, neuro-linguistic programming. I started listening to like how things are said and whatever. And so that was like what led me to like correcting my son on some of the things he said and doing extra affirmations with him. Like he started saying, I can't. And I'm like, whoa. And I'd be like, yes, you can. And so like a positive affirmation I do with him is I can and I will. So anytime he says I can't, I say I can and I will. And then I coach him or help him through whatever he's going through. But I don't let him say these things. The other day he said impossible. And I about flipped my shit. Like you can say every bad cuss word in the book in my house. But the moment you start saying I can't or impossible or, you start like putting up these words that are going to, slow your growth or make you think you can't do things, I shut them down. And I'm like, nope, we're not doing that. You know what I mean? We're not having those belief systems. And so
That's it.
that's part of the parenting hack. I always nip him in the bud. I actually have like a whole section of my phone that is, I took pictures of him. I'm pulling it up. I took pictures of him and I memed it. I put like, I don't know if you could see it. I am coachable and teachable. And I just started doing these little things. I am strong. I am focused. I am brave. And so we do those every night for the most part. I am happy.
That's awesome.
And so that helps him because he gets jammed up and I've noticed he starts saying them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm hearing you talk, and I'm like, using the money doesn't grow on trees example. You're immediately, it's not that you're saying like, hey, we don't have the money for it right now. Here's the solution. It's just negative, right? And you're starting to develop a mindset of everything's very scarce. Like you have a scarcity mindset. You're like, I can't do this because we don't have money. We're not going to have money. Versus like we can do it, but it's going to take X, Y, and Z instead.
Right.
My parents, it's the same thing. Like I'm sure they didn't mean it at the time, but saying like, no, you can't go on the Washington DC trip, or no, you can't go fishing, or no, you can't do whatever because we don't have the money right now. It wasn't like we'll do this, but here's what we have to do first. It was just money doesn't grow on trees, and in the back of your head, you start to, and it's not that it can't be unlearned. It's just like, that's something you have to do. But on the other side, if you say, like you're doing, where you're immediately putting it out forward, like nothing's impossible. I can and I will. Then what kind of problem are you going to shy away from? There's nothing. When you grow up, it's always I can. What do we have to do to fix this? There's just solutions instead of scarcity, which is killer. That's a pretty cool hack. I'm really gonna highlight that when we publish this, because I think that's awesome. And I'm sure guys with kids, it's like they're always trying to bring positivity to them. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah, and then the other thing I do with them is like try twice, and if you can't, ask for help, and that's okay. Like it's okay to not know how to do it. It's not.
I like
it's
that.
okay not to. If you get it wrong, it's okay. Like I teach them these things, and then I'm like, try twice, and then if you can't, I'll help you. But at least try. My mom used to say, "Life's a bitch, and then you die." Did we say that one? Did we talk about that one?
You mentioned that she said it, but we didn't talk.
Yeah.
About it.
So. Oh no, we did talk about this, but anyways, my reverse to that is life is beautiful and it is what you make of it. So like I've gone back and hacked my brain. Like I realized like, man, that was something that like I grew up hearing. Like how much of that am I living into? And so like those early morning moments where like just random thoughts hit me, I'll unpack them. You know what I mean? And I'll try to find the positive to them. It's just something that like I'm hyper aware of it now because I think it matters. It's important to me. But if you don't, what's the opposite of that? You stay negative and pessimistic, and what do you get? I'd rather take the chance of, reversing some of these negative thoughts I've had all my life and trying to put a positive spin on it and see where my life goes. The negativity hasn't been working out, so I'd rather at least put in the effort and try to flip this. Leading up, so the tragedy that happened, we lost a baby at 38 weeks. We went to the hospital expecting a healthy baby boy, or we didn't know the sex at the time. We actually didn't want to know, but we went expecting a healthy baby. And we delivered a stillborn that day, and so super tragic at the time. Just so you know where we're going, that's what I'm going to address here in a minute. But leading up to that, We went to this, like, I call it a diluted Tony Robbins. It's called Landmark Forum. It's free for firefighters, and then the next 2 parts you got to pay. But in the midst of this, they talk about this thing called, they draw 2 circles on the board. This is another very good brain hack that I use all the time. It's one of my favorites. It's actually my go-to. They draw 2 circles on the board, and 1 circle to write what happened, like W-H-A-T, happened, and then on the other one they write stories. And I can't remember if they intertwine or not. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But they bring a guest up, and the guest comes up, and they start talking, and they're just kind of like getting to know them, and they're asking them what's bothering them, and this, that, and the other. And they didn't want all the details, so they're like, I'm ad-libbing this and kind of shortening it, but they're like, what happened? And she's like, well, I was da-da-da, oh, don't tell, don't say everything, whatever. So you were touched inappropriately. What else? Mean things were said to you. So they wrote what happened, those 2 things, right? And so now they're like, all right, so what's the stories around that? And so they start looking at the stories. They're like, well, I don't trust men. I'm not good enough. Whatever. There was a bunch on the story side. And they're like, how much of this are you living in versus just living in what happened? And what they were just trying to basically do is say, something happened in the world, and that's okay. It happened. Let it happen, and let it just be that it happened, and don't live in the stories. Like, she was so caught up in the stories that her life never moved on. She was so stuck in what happened to her, and tragic, yes, and absolutely, completely fucked up, you know what I mean?
Right.
But something happens, and you live in all these stories around it. And it's super powerful when you break that down in certain, like, something happens and you don't realize you're living in all these stories. Yeah. We lose the baby, 3 days in the hospital. We take a couple pictures with the baby. It was a boy, ended up being a baby boy. We go home and, it sets in, the normal depressed, I don't even know if I was depressed. I think I was starting to get that way. I was oversleeping. I wasn't getting up. I wasn't doing my normal routine. So leading up to that moment, I was doing all of this work. I was the